Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and today we are going to be discussing a team that has a lot of reasons to celebrate, but how are they going to do on the ice this season? That's going to be the real question today as we head down to the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., to take a look at the Washington Capitals. So the Washington Capitals here continuing our season previews. We have one more video after this one, and the Washington Capitals are a team I would love to be more excited about. I just think that the division, the conference they're in, it's going to be a rough season for the Washington Capitals. I'll come out of the gate right now and say that. And I know that I have some fans here. Shout out to guys like Toe, who's a big Caps fan here on the Goal Line Hockey community. I think there's a lot of things looking at some of the additions to this team that are really exciting. We should be excited for this group, but I just don't know how I feel they stack up against everybody else out there. So, looking at the top line, you've got Dylan Strome, Alexander Ovechkin, and Andrew Mangiapane. I really like Andrew Mangiapane. He comes in. This is a guy that's going to score goals. He's going to be a pain in the ass for other teams. He's a guy that's going to be able to put up points, and playing alongside guys like Strome and Ovechkin, I would say that's an upgrade for the Caps on the first line. Second line, you've got Connor McMichael, the addition of Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Tom Wilson. So that is a very different dynamic there without Kuznetsov or Backstrom there. So I would say Dubois is probably a downgrade in my opinion. There's a reason he's been bouncing around the league, and not for the right reasons with Dubois. There's been a lot of stuff going on. I hope the best for him. I don't wish ill on Dubois, but there's a pattern that's developing with this guy between Columbus, Winnipeg, and LA. It never ends favorably. It's always excitement when he comes in, but always ends with kind of like, yeah, this is good for both sides. Let's just move on. I think for Washington, that trade was a interesting one to say the least. But the way I look at this, they needed another center here. And even though they have guys like McMichael and LaPierre, they wanted more stability, I think. And a guy like Dubois, yeah, you maybe aren't getting the Dubois when they selected him, third overall in Columbus. You're not getting that version of Dubois. And if Capitals fans are expecting that, you might want to temper that. But I still think they're going to be good. Looking at this team the rest of the way, Milano, LaPierre, and Protas as your third line, that's serviceable. I don't know if that's necessarily a fourth. That's maybe more of a fourth line, but a serviceable third line. I like the players there, but does that mean they're going to do well? I don't know. Fourth line, I do like the fourth line. A lot of guys that can kill penalties. You've got Brandon Duhaime, Nick Dowd, Taylor Radish. All those guys are going to be able to kill penalties for you. So I like those guys coming in. Those are guys that are going to add some credibility to a team that maybe looks a little bit younger, right? With guys like Protas in there, LaPierre, McMichael. There's not a ton of NHL experience with those guys, but that kind of gets balanced out with the Dubois and Ovechkins and Tom Wilsons. It's going to balance itself out a little bit. But who's going to score the goals other than Mangiapane on this team? That is something that I am looking at. As much as I want to say Ovechkin's going to do what he always does, are we going to see the first half of Ovechkin from the season last year or the second half? And that's going to be very indicative of maybe what happens with the Capitals overall next season. Looking at the defense, Jacob Chychrun comes in, Matt Waugh comes in as well. I think it's pronounced Matt Roy. I really like those two additions, but again, are those guys I like Matt Roy, honestly, more than I like Chychrun. Chychrun's been bouncing around a little bit. So, I don't know. I want to be more confident. And especially, we just talked about the Vegas Golden Knights, how I felt like, Alex Pietrangelo is a really good defenseman, but I think he was overdoing things last year. And I think for the Capitals, it's always been a known thing that John Carlson is a minute muncher. But as he is now in his 30s and kind of moving into the twilight of his career soon, playing that much hockey is going to burn him out. So I think it's really important that the Capitals have other defensemen that can play and give him a little bit of time off. Even though Carlson will never admit that he needs a little bit less ice time, I think for the betterment of him and the rest of the team, they need to find more guys that can fill in. And that's what they're really looking to do with adding guys like Roy and Chychrun. Rasmus Sandin had an incredible end to the season with the Capitals. and a guy that I think they're really excited for. You know, he came in and instantly played well, so they're hoping that's going to continue this year. Martin Fehervary and TVR, they continue to hold down that third pair. You know, I think they're pretty good. I think overall they're pretty good, but is that enough in this Eastern Conference, specifically in that Metropolitan Division? And that's where I have a hard time with this team, because as much as I like some of the additions they brought in, I wouldn't say those are guys that I'm like, yeah, those guys are going to be world beaters. I can't say that. And I think for a team like Washington, it's going to be a rough year. I would love to be more confident in this team. And, you know, when you look at the goaltending, you know, Darcy Kemper leaves, they bring in Charlie Lindgren, and now they've got Logan Thompson, the newest addition there. You know, Lindgren had a good season last year, but is that the outlier, or is that the new standard for what we should expect from Lindgren? You know, I know he's a really good goaltender. I've always talked highly about him, and I think he was a little bit underrated when he came into Washington. But now with the success he had last year, maybe is that a little bit is that saying too much about how good he is, or is he really that good? We're going to find that out here, and I think Thompson coming in, that's a really good addition there. I think that's a guy that a lot of Capitals fans are going to like. I would definitely say that's an upgrade over the unhealthy, Darcy Kemper. But, you know, I think there's some Caps fans that if they look down in Hershey and they look at, you know, what we've seen from the Hershey Bears goaltending, they probably would have liked to have seen, you know, a guy like Hunter Shepard maybe get a shot there. And, you know, it's going to end up being Logan Thompson now that comes in. So that's going to be interesting to see how that evolves maybe with Hunter Shepard's career over the next couple of years. But with that said, you know, this is a group that has a lot of good young players. Like I said, you know, you look at some of the guys like Hendrix Lapierre, who came on last year, Connor McMichael. On the back end, we might see some of the younger defensemen that they've been developing in Hershey come up at some point this year. But I just think with looking at teams like that are trying to make the playoffs in their division, like the Islanders and Pittsburgh, I think they're better than the Capitals, in all honesty. I look at teams in the Atlantic, like Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit. I think those teams are probably better than the Washington Capitals. So very quickly, we find a team that made the playoffs last year, got swept in pretty quick fashion by the Capitals, but now coming into this season, I think this could be a kind of a turning point season for the Capitals, and in kind of a bad way. I have the Capitals finishing with 79 points next season. I hate doing these videos because this is a team that I think they're going to tell me that they expect better from that. And I hope you're right. But with just looking at the landscape of the rest of this conference right now in the East, I just don't think Washington's done enough to... I really think the goal scoring is going to be an issue for this team, and the depth on the blue line could end up hurting them. Now, if those young defensemen come in from Hershey and do well, then we're not talking about this, and that talk goes away very quickly. But I just don't really like their odds against some of the other teams in this conference, and I think it's going to really hurt them this year. And like I said, you got to give a little time off for Karlsson, because we started to see he did get banged up down the stretch last season, and that's going to hurt them going into this season if he is maybe still laboring. So I think for the Capitals, honestly, I think a lot of Capitals fans would agree with me that probably the best thing for this team, after the way things ended against the Rangers, they were embarrassed in the playoffs. They would have rather missed the playoffs last year than make the playoffs and get completely embarrassed the way they did. Excuse me. I think they would rather miss the playoffs. And I think ultimately it's going to be the better good of this team to do poorly this year. But like even at their most like strength, this team just doesn't look like a team that's going to make the playoffs, in my opinion. So I want to know what you guys think. What do you guys think of the Capitals? I'm sorry to my Caps fans. I wish I had better news for you. But I want to know, what do you guys think? What are the reasons for excitement? I know they've got some good players like Kuznetsov that are going to continue to develop and come up hopefully this season. We're going to see those guys develop in Hershey. But for this specific season in Washington, it's going to be a developmental year, I think, for the Caps. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, guys.